Welcome. My name is Steve Warlick. I'm a board member and legislative committee chair of the Montana Lodging and Hospitality Association. I'm also the owner-operator of the Best Western Plus Clock Tower Inn in beautiful downtown Billings, Montana. I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to welcome the governor candidates, Steve Bullock and Rick Hill, for traveling to Missoula. Steve Bullock had a little bit of problem. His car broke down, so he is en route at this particular time. It's great to get these two gentlemen here 2 weeks before the election. I'd also like to thank the organizations that have coordinated today's forum. They are the Montana Lodging and Hospitality Association, the Missoula Downtown Association, Destination Missoula, and Voices of Montana Tourism. Thank you very much. I'd also appreciate and thank all of you for attending today's forum and for the strong support for small business and travel and tourism within the state of Montana. I'd like to introduce our panelists. The first individual is Jim McGowan. Jim is the executive director, Jim is the publisher of the Missoulian and Rivali Republic. Next is Linda McCarthy, executive director of the Missoula Downtown Association and a board member of the Destination Missoula Convention and Visitors Board. And finally is Mike Dennison. He's the Montana State Bureau reporter with Lee Newspapers. What I'd like to do is to review the format with you. Today's candidates will each have 25 minutes to separately respond to our panel's questions and provide a closing statement. Candidates received 4 questions in advance, and panelists will also ask a question that the candidates did not receive in advance. As usual at most forums, there are a few house rules, sort of audience rules. First and foremost, if any member of the audience or any person in the forum facility, invited or not, demonstrates disruptive behavior, security and event organizers have the right to remove you from the forum room and/or facility. Second is, please, all of you that have your smartphones, cell phones, and anything else, would you turn them to vibrate? Remain courteous and respectful to speakers and audience members at all times. Signs, buttons, and campaign paraphernalia is not permitted in the room. Please hold the applause until each candidate has concluded his time on stage. And finally, photography and video is not permitted except for credentialed news professionals on assignment. Before we begin, just a quick item about the purpose of today's forum is really about economic development and small business. When you look at travel and tourism, every day in the state of Montana, out-of-state travelers are spending over $7.5 million in our state. If you look at that over the year, it's $2.8 billion. When you look at employment, it's over 39,000 jobs. If you were to look around and go around, 1 out of every 13 people employed in the state of Montana are employed because of travel and tourism from out-of-state travelers. It's a big, big business. It's an important business to the state of Montana. With that, what I'd like to do is welcome the Republican candidate, Rick Hill. Okay, he's coming. This is when you stand up here and go, is Rick? Okay, come on in, Rick. What I'd like to introduce you is the Republican candidate for governor, Rick Hill. Let me just review the rules with the candidates. First of all, there will be 3 minutes allotted for each question and response and 3 minutes for your closing statements. Matt Cease, MHLA board member and general manager of the Bozeman Super 8 will be our timekeeper. Our timer will signal a green light at 1 minute, a yellow light at 2 minutes, and a red light when your time is up. And the panel may interrupt you to enforce rules and ensure that questions receive a full and direct response. Everything okay?
I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, so first question is for me. In the last legislative session, lawmakers voted to divert approximately $1.9 million in tourism marketing funds to the general fund and to sunset the lodging tax statutory appropriations. These bills passed but were vetoed. Will you commit to protect and preserve the 4% lodging use tax for tourism, marketing, and retain the lodging tax statutory protection?
Do I have to take 3 minutes?
No.
Then the answer is yes. I will. I don't agree with all the vetoes the governor vetoed in the last session, but those are two I do agree with. One of the things I believe in is that when you make a deal, you make a deal. And I've all my life made deals with people with a handshake. And so a deal was made a long time ago that tax would be used for tourism promotion, and I think it's important, I think it's valuable, and so I will continue to support it.
Follow up to that question? Mm-hmm. In Montana, lodging facilities collect 7% lodging facility tax, of which 3% goes to the general fund and 4% is used to promote, market, and sell the state of Montana. What would have to occur with the state budget for you to divert any of the 4% lodging facility tax dollars to the general fund?
Well, I can't imagine any circumstances under which I would do that. We have a pretty ambitious plan for implementing priority budgeting in state government. Louisiana is a state that implemented priority budgeting under the current governor, Bobby Jindal, and they were able to save a lot of money. And the consequence of that is they were able to take a budget substantially out of balance and produce surpluses. We're going to implement priority budgeting. And by the way, the expenditures of these funds will go through priority budgeting to make sure that we're doing the following. And that is that I believe that every expenditure of government, every activity of government should be put through this test. And the test is, what values underpin this program or this activity? What are we trying to achieve? How do we know whether we're achieving it? How do we measure whether we're achieving it? And who's accountable? So we will put it through that test to make sure that we're getting value for the expenditure of those funds. I think we are now. I don't have any reason to think we're not, but all of government will go through that test. We believe that with the energy development that's coming to Montana, Montana...
We're up on that question.
All right.
This is not
Ask me about energy development.
This is not the fun part of the job. Jim, question.
Okay. To recognize tourism as a leading state industry, would you consider modifying traditional cabinet positions to include a tourism director?
If the question is will I develop a department of tourism, the answer to that would be no. I don't think we need more departments of government. In fact, if anything, I think we need to do some consolidation of that. But I have pretty aggressive plans for how the Lieutenant Governor, John Sanju, will operate within our administration. And he's going to take on the economic development and the economic promotion responsibilities of the state of Montana. So we have some organizational changes that I think we're still in the development stage. But the important point here is that do I think tourism is important? And the answer to that is obviously yes. I mean, we get, I think, 90,000 Montanans. Jobs are dependent on what you do. 10 million people come to Montana. We would like that to be a bigger number. So we're going to elevate tourism within the administration all the way into the governor's office. In addition to that, I think many of you know that we have a proposal at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. The goal of that is to create more interest in out-of-state people and taking advantage of hunting and fishing opportunities in Montana by restoring relationships between landowners, the agency, and sportsmen's groups. So all of those will be part of our agenda. It all, I think, recognizes the importance that this industry brings to the state of Montana, both in terms of its economic benefit, but its employment benefits as well. We think there's a lot of opportunity to even do better than we're doing now.
Okay, follow-up question, or Linda?
Nice to have you here in Missoula. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
What do you think can be done in the governor's office to strengthen Main Street businesses in Montana?
Well, our whole campaign has been about how do we improve the business climate in Montana, because Montana is a difficult place to do business. It's a costly place to do business. And so we've identified the legal barriers and regulatory barriers that are holding us back from attracting the investment that can cause our economy to grow. The goal of this, of course, is more employment, more jobs, and and better paying jobs while we're at that. So we'll have a comprehensive tort reform package. I have a property tax plan that would take the state's share of oil and gas revenues and use those to fund education so that we can lower property taxes. That'll benefit everybody in this room, every small business in this room, everybody in the hospitality business in this room, because it'll lower property taxes for everybody. Every homeowner, every business in Montana will benefit as a consequence of that. I mentioned our plans at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. The challenge, I think, in Montana is how do we get our tort liability system, our workers' compensation system, our unemployment insurance system, how do we get our employment law system from out here in the fringe to the mainstream? And we'll have a very comprehensive legislative package to address that. The goal of that will be to make Montana a better place, a less hostile place to do business. I almost made it.
Well, you can actually go to the red. You can actually go to the red.
Oh, okay. Will you yield me a minute to talk about energy development? No.
Mike?
Energy development is important, but we're here to talk about tourism today. And to that end, the tourism industry is closely linked with national and state parks, which single-handedly account for approximately $300 million in economic impact in Montana. What actions would your administration take to enhance state parks and recreation?
A big part of Montana is the fact that 30% of Montana is owned by the federal government. Substantial part of that, of course, is in national parks. And one of the things that we want to do, again, under the Lieutenant Governor's effort, is to push our federal neighbors to give us more recreational access to the federal lands. We think that that will help promote tourism. It'll also obviously help promote industry as well. You made a point that we're here to talk about tourism, but the hospitality business also benefits from energy development. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, the occupancy in the state of Montana that is beneficial because of resource development. And so we think it's an important part, is a part and parcel of that. I think the most important thing that I think I can say about that is that we recognize how important this industry is. We want it to grow and be bigger. We believe that we can have the treasure state and the big sky country at the same time. We've had it in the past. We've had the benefits of both. We think we can have the benefits in the future. We also want to use the benefits, the economic benefits that come from resource development to give broad tax relief to all Montanans that will benefit most of the people in this room. I recognize you. You've been at a few debates.
Yes, we have. I think on question number 4, I mean, you've basically addressed that. So I'd like to move on to something along that vein about energy development and tourism as well. You've talked a lot about energy and natural resource development. What about energy costs for Main Street businesses and for people who own all these businesses in this room? Is there any policy you plan to pursue that would reduce energy costs for the business consumer?
Well, as you know, Mike, in Montana we produce a lot more energy than we consume. But the one thing I think we want to be guarded against is that we don't set standards by the state of Montana to expand high-cost energy in replace of the low-cost. And a good example of that is wind energy. Now, I'm for all forms of energy development, including wind energy. But what I am not in favor of is expanding the portfolio requirements for high-cost wind energy to supplement low-cost, say, coal energy development or natural gas development. And so I think that that's one of the ways that we can protect against that. Montana is rich in energy, and we should develop our energy resources, deploy that so it benefits all Montanans, including, of course, small business owners as well.
Follow-up question, Mike? Okay. Jim? Or
It's on. Okay. As evidence from intense smoke and fires this summer that burned well into October, scientists say climate change has extended our fire season by an estimated 80 days. As governor, what efforts would you initiate to be part of the climate solution and simultaneously protect our forest, wildlife, fish, and agricultural heritage and communities?
Well, first of all, there's an underlying assumption there that these fires are a consequence of climate change, and I just don't buy that argument. I think that these fires are more a consequence of mismanagement of the resource. And that's been apparent for a long time. When I served on the Resources Committee in the United States Congress, we had identified then over 45 million acres of forest in the United States that were at risk of catastrophic fire. And the administration's done almost nothing to address that. We will. I mean, one of the things that we're going to address from the governor's office is to have within the governor's office an advocacy to work with local governments to assert their coordination rights, to require federal agencies to be a better resource manager and to manage that resource so that it's better for Montanans. That'll include fire issues.
Okay. Linda?
We're going to stick with climate change for a moment. As governor, how would you proactively respond to climate change and its impacts on our economy?
If we want to talk about climate change, 2,000 years ago, the Earth was warmer than it is today. 1,000 years ago, the Earth was substantially warmer than it is today. 500 years ago, the Earth was substantially colder than it is today. The point of that is that the changes that occur in climate are occurring for a variety of different reasons, not necessarily the issue that you would like to be describing, which is the carbon in the atmosphere. Some people would say Montana might benefit from a warmer climate because we'd have longer growing seasons, it could have more diversity of crops. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can address there. I think the more important thing is to say, how might this impact our economy and what should we be doing in case that it does? I don't see that what's occurred today, that it is having an adverse impact on our economy, so I don't think that the state of Montana needs to have a policy response to it.
Mike, last question.
Last one.
Rick, you've spoken in support of eliminating the property tax on business equipment for all businesses, I believe, including large corporations. How do we deal with the lost tax revenues to cities, counties, school districts, and other local governments if we do that?
As you know, the tax plan that I have proposed for the upcoming session is to use natural resource revenues, oil and gas, to reduce property taxes across the board for all Montanans. I would like to see us get rid of the business equipment tax because I think it discourages people from making the kind of investments that we want to have them make that translate into jobs. But I haven't proposed a plan for that because I think this has to be evaluated in a comprehensive way. We need to look at how our tax policy compares with competitive tax policies in the states that are around us. We have a business equipment tax, other states don't. But we also don't have a sales tax that other states do. So what we have to do is look at what the long-term costs of acquiring and holding equipment is in Montana. So we're not prepared to address the specifics of how we'll reform that. That'll come in the second term of my office.
Great. Rick, you have 3 minutes. We all appreciate you taking the time to come visit with us today. You have 3 minutes for closing.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for what you do for Montana, and keep doing what you're doing. I hear things are going pretty well in the industry that you're involved with, and we're glad to see that. We've made this campaign about really 3 things. One, taking down the obstacles that are holding Montana's economy back. Regulatory and legal challenges that have Montana out of the mainstream. I believe that we remove those barriers, Montana's economy will be unleashed with great potential growth. 2, we need to have a different way of managing and accounting for how we spend money in government, called priority budgeting. I already described that for you. That will save us money, but more important than that, it'll help us deliver quality services. 3rd, we need an education system that's preparing our kids for the 21st century. So we're talking about structural reforms in education, just like structural reforms in government, just like the structural reforms in our legal and regulatory climate that'll make Montana a more prosperous place so that we can renew the American dream for the next generation of Montanans. A government they can afford, a job that they can support their families on, and an education that'll prepare them for the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Okay. First of all, I'd really appreciate you bearing with us. A very unusual circumstance and an occurrence from that standpoint, but I really do appreciate it. What I'd like to do is welcome to the stage the Democratic candidate for governor, Steve Bullock. Let me just quickly review the rules. There'll be 3 minutes allotted for each question and response and 3 minutes for your closing statements. There's a timer down here. Matt will be keeping the timer at the signal green light at 1 minute, yellow light at 2 minutes, and a red light. I get to stop. Yes. And then our panel may interrupt you to enforce the rules and ensure that the questions receive a full and direct response.
Sounds great.
Fair? Perfect. First question is mine. In the last legislative session, lawmakers voted to divert approximately $1.9 million in tourism marketing funds to the general fund and to sunset the lodging tax statutory appropriations. These bills passed but were vetoed. Will you commit to protect and preserve the 4% lodging use tax for tourism marketing and retain the lodging tax's statutory protection?
The answer is yes. First of all, though, a little bit of indulgence that while I'm campaigning, I try to help Montana small businesses. So I've helped a tow truck company out of Anaconda and a auto repair in Deer Lodge, and now also we sold some fuel to get another car here. So I apologize again for... What's that? Turn my mic on? Boy, and I'm loud enough. Better? There it is. So I won't go through all of that yet once again, but I'm trying to keep Montana's main streets vital as I go along. You know, when the last legislature said, let's actually take some of that 4% and put it in the general fund, that's extremely short-sighted for what Montana is and what Montana can become. At the end of the day, that we don't have to look that far. I mean, we could go back to Colorado in 1993 when they said, let's actually take the dollars that we've been using for promotion of the state and put it in the general fund and stop promotion. They're still digging their way out as a result of that, even though it started being funded again in 2000. Washington State's been doing the same thing time and time again as well. So I don't think that this makes a lot of sense long term. We need to be instead turning around and saying, how do we better invest? And maybe at times also providing differing opportunities for how that 4% could be used. Was talking to, as an example, the director of the Gallatin Airport. And he said, well, the state shouldn't be the ones actually subsidizing different airlines, because at that point, you're actually choosing winners and losers, and every sort of regional area has different things going on. But there's one possibility where we could actually potentially, if the chunk that actually goes to the local side, it makes sense to them to be able to use that dollars to actually subsidize new airlines coming in. The long-term point, though, is that the state collects enough money, and it already gets the 3% for the general fund of the bed tax. And it would have been a real shame had the governor not, last legislative session, made sure that that money stayed where it was into promotion and tourism, the convention and visitors bureaus. And I, as governor, will make sure that we keep that money directed where we should, because long term it only makes sense not only for your various industries, but also for the long-term economic vitality of our overall state.
Thank you. Follow-up question. In Montana, lodging facilities collect 7% lodging facility tax, of which 3% goes to the general fund and 4% is used to promote, market, and sell the state of Montana. What would have to occur with the state budget for you to direct any of the 4% lodging facility tax dollars to the general fund?
It won't. I mean, and I will make sure, I don't know, hailstorms, everybody's car breaking down, the whole state motor pool going south. No, this is money that needs to continue to go. I mean, we just can look at other partners or other states around the country and see what happens as a result. And in the last 8 years, I mean, there has been
both the governor and the legislature at times has done some real good things, making sure that we are one of the few states that didn't end up in the red. I'll continue to do the same as governor, but this 4%, especially, again, as I said initially, when the state takes 3% of it already, I mean, this 4% is money that we need to make sure stays in your hands in promoting Montana, not just build more either prisons or education or otherwise.
Perfect, thank you. Jim, question?
Okay, to recognize tourism as a leading state industry, would you consider modifying traditional cabinet positions to include a tourism director?
Yeah, you know, the answer is yes, I'd certainly consider how we better highlight it. I don't know if making it a cabinet position is sort of the be-all and end-all to it all. We really need to think of tourism as one of our sort of core industries and economic drivers in our state. And I think, you know, we'll talk another question about small businesses and the like, but really we need to recognize that when somebody comes to Missoula, as an example, it's not just, boy, we get their tourism dollars. It's also a chance to showcase the community. We know from studies in Colorado that 8 of 10 businesses that actually locate to a state, they first came after a positive experience. So when we come up with our overall business plan for how we grow our economy, whether it's a tourism as a cabinet position or otherwise, they got to be a significant piece of that. And we really need to look at, you know, in some ways, and I know that this group and others have made sort of long-term business plans. Well, we've done a good job in getting the sort of the first-time visitor there, right? But we haven't always said, all right, how do we expand the shoulder seasons? And how do we expand winter? And how do we make them actually stay longer? How do we actually say, all right, it's not all just Glacier and Yellowstone or Big Sky? And that's part of an overall coordinated plan that you'll have a partner in the governor's office to help create that. Because again, it's more than just your businesses, it's the overall vitality of the state. And whether it's a department director or a cabinet, or whether it's actually just saying, if we're really serious about economic development, and we're not talking about our number 2 industry as part of that, well, then we're really missing something.
Great. Linda?
Thank you for your extraordinary efforts to join us here today. We're delighted to have you. And for all of you, thank you for your patience. I'm wondering what you think can be done in the governor's office to strengthen Main Street businesses in Montana.
In addition to breaking down around the state. You know, it's really, when you look at 97% of the businesses in Montana have 50 or fewer employees, and we ought to be spending more time figuring out how we actually help those companies rather than spending all our time saying, let's have more tax cuts out of state corporations. You know, we know at the end of the day that businesses come to a state because, in part, a talented and trained workforce and a good education system. So we need to be investing in this. We need to make sure that businesses and government's role in it are actually providing opportunities and not obstacles when a small business is trying to get someplace. So we put out a comprehensive jobs plan. Well, we also know, and I think that hits the next question too, that in addition to, you know, responsibly developing our resources, my kids are young. The jobs they may have are jobs that didn't even exist when I was a kid. So we have to say, how do we diversify our economy, make sure those sort of jobs are there? We'll start out on day 1 and make a Main Street Montana task force. We know that there's a hodgepodge of different incentives out there, but nobody's even taken a look really at how these work together and do they even attract businesses. And you could have a diversified plastic, which is here in Billing, or here in Missoula, which I toured, and they said, I don't have time to see what the government can offer. Yet if you're in Great Falls, there's a company that recently moved there, and they said, you know, part of it was the training grants that actually helped us get these 70 employees. We'll have our Main Street Montana Task Force. I've already proposed a business equipment tax for 11,000 Montana small and medium-sized businesses. That would completely eliminate the business equipment tax for that.
We're done.
Oh, stop, Steve. You can read it on my website.
Mike, Or do you want to do a
I'd
follow-up
like
question?
to do a follow-up, please.
Yes.
The tourism industry, as you know, is closely linked to national and state parks across the state, which single-handedly accounts for approximately $300 million in economic impact. What actions would your administration take to enhance state parks and recreation?
Well, that's a good question. I think, for one, continuing to fund it. Even last legislative session on the state park side, there was efforts to basically take away dollars to make additional access spots. And that's actually, I mean, this is not only important for tourism and promotion, but it's also a lot of what I call one of the great equalizers in Montana. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your back pocket, you can enjoy our parks, you can enjoy hunting, and you can enjoy fishing in ways that you can't in other states. But really, when we look at, for the huge out-of-state travelers, Yellowstone and Glacier will still be a big driver. We need to figure out ways where we're promoting to complement that so they recognize all just the jewels that we have in Montana that they probably wouldn't hear about otherwise. And we also need to make sure that we're providing the stable level of funding to continue to both maintain these parks, improve them, and when there's opportunities to improve access and other things, that we ought to be doing it.
Mike?
Good afternoon. What are your thoughts on the value of the tourism industry in relation to the extractive industries? Is there a tension between the two? Does there need to be?
Well, I don't think that there should be a tension between the two. I mean, I recognize that people come to Montana not just to see the Berkeley pit or hoping that they'll spot a cyanide heap leach mine right at the headwaters of the Blackfoot. So that's where we say we can responsibly develop our resources. And I think that the land board that I currently sit on has done a darn good job of it. When you look at, just in the last 4 years, 215 million board feet of timber sold. That's 22,156 jobs. When you look at what we've been able to do in other areas. And we want to do it right, because when you don't do it right, that also can give a black eye on the overall state. But no, I think there's great opportunities for resource development, but I also don't think it's an either or. And I think that we need to continue to promote and build on tourism and recognize that that drives businesses into a state or makes them want to be here, but also recognize too, and that's where sort of the jobs of the future, where I was going with the small businesses, for minimal investments in our state, be it growth through agriculture grants that actually makes it so that we can have more value-added ag here, or a board of research and commercialization that helps small businesses along, or business incubators. You have one here in Missoula, you have one in Bozeman. The state has never provided any sort of matching funding or assistance to do that, to build these businesses. And you look at, I've been in businesses here in Missoula, Blue Marble for an example, they said, we looked all over the country, from Arizona to New Mexico. We decided to come here, in part our quality of life, in part the education system and the opportunity to draw from the university, and in part what we can do. Well, your businesses, tourism drives a big piece of that in making, here's the branding of our quality of life. And we can do both, I think, and there's great opportunities to do so.
Perfect. Follow-up question, Mike? Okay. Jim?
Okay, over to climate change. As evidence from intense smoke and fires this summer that burned well into October, scientists say climate change has extended our fire season by an estimated 80 days. As governor, what efforts would you initiate to be part of the climate solution and simultaneously protect our forest, wildlife, fish, agricultural heritage, and communities?
Yeah. I think there's a number of things in our sort of Jobs of the Future Part 2 plan that directly addresses that you can get off the website. From the standpoint of that, we also know one of the best things that we can do is conservation. And I'll be darned if Great Falls School District is just an example, and McKinstry, which is a business that is actually, I think, mostly located out of Missoula, at least the Montana side of it. They said if you do some conservation efforts, it's not only going to create some immediate jobs, and that's like changing, we're not talking just changing light bulbs, boilers and things like that. And in 7 years, it'll more than pay for itself. So we can do some things on the conservation side to assist. I don't think that the answer is that when we say climate change that, okay, we're going to essentially unilaterally disarm and not do any more of fossil fuels or coal and things like that. Because even the climate scientists say that over time, there will be changes to our overall mixes, but you can't stop things immediately, nor should we. So I think that we can do some good things with conservation. We also threw out that we're one of only a few states that doesn't have a PACE program, which is kind of at the local level, and what that provides is tax credits on the conservation side. But we also have to recognize that in a state of 140,000 square miles, I mean, there's great opportunities for all kinds of other things too. I mean, we've had one of the fastest growing renewable on the wind side in the country. So let's develop that. Let's actually make a lot of opportunities for the state, and I think in that way, as nationally they start putting together more of an overall national energy policy, we can be contributing to it.
Linda?
Montana has about 1 million residents and about 10 million visitors every year, 10-to-1 ratio of visitors to residents. What can people like us in this room, business owners, do to help Montana's elected officials truly understand and appreciate tourism and what it does for our economies?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that you need to be a viable and visible presence, not only through the legislature, but throughout and talking to legislators. Having things like this is certainly important. I don't think you need to do a heck of a lot with me because I get it. But I think that not unlike how the Highway Patrol offers ride-alongs to legislators to say, okay, I know that it's a compressed time in your 90 days every 2 years. But this is a dialogue and a conversation that has to occur more than just during the legislative session. And the recognition that, that as legislators have meetings and things, they're having meetings in the places that you're the host of. And the recognition that overall and continuing to hammer into it, you know what, this is right now the #2 industry in Montana. And look at what Colorado State University Business School said, that actually when we're talking about new businesses coming in, that 80% of them are because they first came here. And look at what branding in Montana and what the opportunities in Montana have done already. If we continue to do that, and you will have a partner in the governor's office to do so, I think we'll be able to get through their heads.
Great. Last question, Mike?
Steve, as you know, health insurance is still difficult to afford for a small business. We also have the Affordable Care Act taking full effect in 2014. I'm wondering, if you're governor, what might be your plans to help Montana's small businesses provide health coverage for their employees if they choose to do so?
Yeah, I think even irrespective of the Affordable Care Act, that we finally sort of hit a place in our state and in probably our nation where we're saying, you know, we're paying a lot and we're not getting that much. And a lot of families are one major illness away from bankruptcy. And even if we have insurance, that our insurance rates are higher as a result of those people that are using the emergency room the most expensive way. And we're not dealing with primary care. We're paying for repeated results. We're not paying to keep people healthy. Other states, I will never be an emergency room doctor. But Governor Kitzhaber, as an example, in Oregon, is one who was an ER doctor. He came in as governor and said, you know what, if we actually change the incentive system and start paying people and paying hospitals and paying others for having a primary care provider and making that the gateway and making sure that people are getting taken care of up front, and we're actually going to pay them to keep people healthy, not just for repeated tests, we'll be able to have savings. And they took a big chunk off, you know, it's a Medicaid waiver, and Oregon's doing it. And Oregon's been up in the Flathead, Governor Kitzhaber has, in part because of what you all do. He loves coming here and fishing and backpacking and things like that. And I sat down with the Kalispell Hospital multiple times and said, we can do this in Montana. And I've been in Butte at the Community Health Center. And the Community Health Center is actually saying, you know what, on an individual basis, we're going to turn around and look at people one by one and build health improvement plans. And we're going to start taking care of them so it's not just they come in with diabetes. What this means overall is that the dust is still going to settle on the Affordable Care Act, what it means for all of us, but we can actually start to change the way that we're providing health care, which ought to make it a heck of a lot more affordable and accessible for small businesses.
Great. Steve, thank you so much for coming. You get 3 minutes to closing remarks. And again, we do appreciate the effort that you took to get here. And the small businesses of Montana really, really do appreciate you.
Yeah, and since I missed lunch, I'm going to buy lunch somewhere else. And, you know, every now and then somebody has a day like that. But, no, I appreciate, first of all, your asking us, the candidates, to come and talk with you in the closing days and weeks of the election. And this isn't the first opportunity I've had to speak to folks like you and to talk about some of the issues and the opportunities for our state. You will be a big piece of that. For me, getting into this race for governor, in some ways, it was almost selfish. I look at it that we started late. My oldest daughter is in 5th grade. If I'm elected, get to serve 2 terms, she'll just be leaving high school when I get kicked out of the governor's office. Montana was a gift for me growing up. Provided great opportunities, and I couldn't imagine anywhere else I would have wanted to raise my family. But so this is about 2013 and what happens in this next legislature and trying to bring people together. But it's also about where Montana can go and can become. And you in the Montana promotion business and me as governor, we actually share something pretty darn close. Because one of the things that I need to be doing if I'm doing my job as governor is actually promoting our state. And promoting the opportunities, not just for today, but long term. That's how we get businesses here, not to say everything is so broken that it'll never work, but actually say, we have great opportunities here. And you can travel around Missoula, you can travel around Bozeman, you can go up to the Flathead and go through Zinc Air. You know, you can go to any number of businesses already that are starting to do some great things. That's where we build on. And we build on it by investing in public education, not defunding or dismantling it. We build on it by saying we need to make sure that we bring the legislature together to say, where's Montana going to be? Because these aren't Democrat, these aren't Republican issues. This is really about what sort of state we want to grow old in, raise our family, hopefully live in a safe community, get a good education, and be able to pass on even better for our kids than we had here. I'm excited about the opportunity to do that. Certainly hope that I get that opportunity, and I'd appreciate any good words and thoughts over the next couple of weeks on your behalf toward our effort. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve. Once again, thank you for all attending. I appreciate the time, effort, and energy. And also, if you'd give a round to the panelists for taking the time.